everyone, I'm your host Pensyfan19 and welcome to the June 2021 Pensyfan Periodical. This is a monthly news series which covers most of the major railroading headlines from around the world, as well as my opinions on them. We have a lot of articles to go over today, so with that in mind, let's get rolling. Firstly, one of the largest rail infrastructure bills has been passed by President Biden, as $66 billion out of $1.2 trillion has been dedicated to rail infrastructure. Although some funding is better than nothing, the original infrastructure bill contained a total of $4 trillion, but this was reduced to $1.2 trillion after a series of negotiations with numerous politicians. Now, this was likely due to various other topics which are unrelated to infrastructure, such as healthcare and social services being attached to the bill, which other politicians did not agree upon, and thus caused a series of negotiations. Yet in the original plan, roads were planned to receive $80 billion, but this was reduced to $66 to be shared by almost all passenger and freight roads in the nation. Considering that Amtrak alone asked for $75 billion, the total amount of funding received by each road is going to be relatively small. Once again, I feel that this is an example of why private corporations such as Brightline should operate and fund passenger services, since they are funded through almost unlimited private investment in one specific region, rather than a large portion being divided by hundreds of other companies for projects across the US. But in the end, some funding is better than nothing, as it now raises rail infrastructure as a key component of the government, which has to be funded in large proportions. Interestingly enough, there is also an article stating that Brightline West will benefit from the infrastructure bill if a public entity is involved, so that will be interesting to follow up on. In similar news, Amtrak has released a detailed map for the Heartland's Flyer extension. Construction has started for the Scarborough subway extension, which will replace the TTC Line 3, while construction has started for LA Metro's airport connector. Both the Valley Metro in Temp and the Mid-Coast extension in San Diego have begun testing, along with the Tel Aviv Light Rail. Brookhaven Rail Terminal is transporting more sand for new golf courses. The only reason why I'm bringing this up is that I'm a Long Island Rail fan, and this terminal is close to me. Speaking of freight, US Steel has sold Transtar to Fortress. TFW is using ex-Grand Central Mark IV train sets for Swansea to Manchester service. The Cascar Circle line has been added to TSW2. A Trenitalia Bombardier Zefiro is advertising for the Italian football team, while a Trenitalia Rock is advertising for Luca. The Foo Fighters is to release a disco album called the DGs. CRRC is trying to enter the European market by delivering bi-level EMUs to Westbahn in Austria. The first high-speed train in Tibet has begun operation with very boxy HSTs, while China is also proposing a high-speed route to the US via Russia and Canada. And there is a proposed high-speed rail agency known as North Atlantic Rail, which wants to connect New York to Boston with high-speed rail through Long Island. This plan calls for high-speed service along the Ronkonkoma line, then going in a tunnel under the Long Island Sound, and then resurfacing at New Haven before going through the Hartford line and an unspecified route to Providence, all of which with service improvements for the LIRR and MBTA commuter routes. As a Long Island Rail fan, I'm definitely hoping that this proposal eventually gets approved and brings new service and rail fanning opportunities to Long Island and the rest of the Northeast Corridor. Speaking of which, here's some interesting news. Wabtec and General Motors are to work together to make battery and hydrogen-powered locomotives, thus bringing the fierce rivals together to work on a common goal of making emission-free locomotives. A MagRail test track is to open in Poland, thus combining conventional rail lines with maglev. The RIA has called for the UK to support hydrogen-powered trains with what looks like a hydrogen-powered light rail or tram. I've heard of hydrogen-powered locomotives in multiple units before, but not hydrogen-powered trams. This concept does make sense since it might be cheaper to use hydrogen instead of electrifying the route. Speaking of my favorite form of alternative energy, hydrogen-powered Class 799 multiple units are to carry delegates to a UN climate change conference, while Britain is testing a hybrid multiple unit which uses a battery and diesel motor. So much for decarbonizing the industry if your MU still uses diesel fuel. Speaking of the total opposite of decarbonization, US Sugar has acquired Atlantic Coastline 1504 with plans to restore it for revenue freight service. The Bure Valley Railway is to test biocoal for their locomotives, which could offset the potential coal shortage for British Heritage Railways. GBRF 69001 has been repainted with the American and British flags to celebrate its Progress Rail engine. A Norfolk Southern SD70AC and Dash 9 have been spotted leading a local running long hood forward in Elkhart, Indiana, while two BNSF SD70ACEs ran a two-car local also running long hood forward. XLIRR P72 Bridalveil Falls has been spotted in Bellin, as it has likely been purchased from the Mount Hood Railroad. Amtrak ran a combined Southwest Chief with 4 locomotives, 12 coaches, 2 baggage cars, and 4 private cars, while they also ran a combined Cascades with the Horizon coaches and a Talgo 8 set. All of this while an Empire Builder only ran with 4 cars. A Metro North B car has been incorrectly placed between the A ends of 2 M8s. CP has made a political cartoon to try to stop CN's acquisition of KCS. Trades Magazine has recommended Amtrak The Last Railbender from AJ Railfan. MTH has released a New York Central GP9 in a pacemaker red livery. That looks really good though. The STB has released a rail heritage map, while the Northern Central Railway has reopened the Howard Tunnel near York. The NCAA has ruled that college athletes can be paid. RFI has ordered maintenance Stadler flirts. France loaned almost 2 million euros for infrastructure projects in Egypt. SNCF and Alstom have released liveries for the TGV-M train set, with the bottom one looking a lot like the Metrolink paint scheme. Siemens is taking legal action against HS2 for not using their train sets. London Euston is the first station to install sign language announcements. And the RDG has warned against cutting domestic flights, since airlines would have to lower their prices and somehow make flying more attractive. I kind of see where they're coming from with this, but just because something is cheaper doesn't mean that it's the best option. Similar to how soda is cheaper than water, oil is cheaper than the alternative forms of energy. However, both soda and oil have worse health-related effects for those using them more often than the cleaner alternative, and the option that is worse for one's health or environment should be discouraged. But alas, we have the sad news. Brightline West has once again pushed back their bond sale, this time in 2022. CalMod has also been delayed until 2024. Both Amtrak's Avelia Liberty and Venture coaches have been delayed. A2A Rail has filed for bankruptcy with the project's future in question. Canadian grain hoppers are being scrapped. And the Navanti West Coast Pendolino has failed to break a London to Glasgow record, thus showing that, no matter how hated they are, no one can beat the British Rail APT. Now here's a follow-up news section for articles covering stories from previous episodes. First off, new photos of Union Pacific 1979 have been released, while the CSXF 40s 1 and 2 have led an office car special. A new rendering has been made of DC Metro 8000 series. I think it makes it stand out more when compared to the rest of the fleet. Meanwhile, new photos have been released of Purple Line LRVs. NYC Subway R211s have arrived in New York. Alstom Islands have entered service in Poland. Minnesota has approved necessary funding for a second Chicago to St. Paul train. And Tello operated its last train between France and Northern Italy, with services being replaced by Trenitalia high-speed service of France. Up next is the station upgrades portions for proposal, construction, and openings of stations around the world. For this episode we have Carbis Bay, Gerrards Cross, Swansea, Surrey Hills, State Lake Station, Fossacini, Santiago de Compostela, and Tulum. Interestingly enough, this proposal is using Taiwanese HSTs as railcars for light rail service. Or from what I can tell, maybe an intercity or commuter I think it's a high-speed Wait a minute. Does that say 99 miles per hour? And does that say one track for the entire route? In other news, Germany is to develop autonomous railcars, while Doderbahn has ordered new rack cars. Paribus and Rotterdam have purchased DM20 EBBs. Russian Railways is to develop hydrogen-powered trains, while STM has ordered 8-axle 2TE35As. TEM9s have been ordered by Semix and Rostom, while Sweg has ordered Alstom Prima hybrids. The Euro 9000 has begun testing in its home nation of Switzerland. The Tokyo Metro Class 18000 has entered service. New liveries have been applied for the SNG and VIRMM on NS. The Durango in Silverton is to go coal-free. Broccoli has been declared America's favorite vegetable. GBRF 66764 has been dedicated to a HM Railway Inspector. Both the Class 230 and Class 777 were on display in testing at Rail Live 2021. Amtrak 300 and 100 have been placed on display. Both MBTA MP36s have been sent away for rebuilding. PRR 1361 is to be restored. The Colebrookdale Railroad has placed Brill Doodlebug M90 back in service with a new livery, while Lackawanna 2454 has been restored as a coach. Conrail GP10 is to operate at the Cincinnati Scenic Railway. The Adrian Bliss Field has been sold to Transportation Holding LLC, and the Fillmore and Western has been sold to a new operator. Don't worry, this road isn't going anywhere. It's just being given to a new operator starting in the fall. In the meantime, congratulations to GB Rail Freight, Direct Rail Services, and Mersey Rail for Gold and Silver Whistle Awards, as well as the MTA for their interactive subway map winning a Gold Lion Award, and for the Amerton Railway winning the Queen's Award of Voluntary Service. Lastly, happy anniversaries to the Chicago Well, DART, PKP Freight, and ICE. After all that, it is now time for this month's Meme of the Month. This month's Meme of the Month is Engineering versus Yellow Thing. And now, the top story of the June 2021 Pensyfan Periodical is Amtrak to refurbish Superliners. As part of a plan to further extend the service life of the Superliners, Amtrak has begun a refurbishment program for the interiors of their Superliners. Looking at the photos we have, the seats look to be just as comfy as the somewhat recently refurbished Amfleets, thus improving the overall service quality for long-distance routes. Although the Superliners are almost 50 years old, with most of them being built in the mid-1970s, there have been some talks of eventually replacing these passenger cars. Even though this is likely part of a plan to improve LD service with the introduction of the ALC 42s, refurbishing the existing Superliners is a cheaper option than buying new passenger cars for routes which are debated as unprofitable. This is likely due to lack of dedicated funding for these long-distance routes, which results in them being underutilized and not able to reach their full service potential. As someone who has been on Superliners on a few occasions, I do feel that replacement cars would be better in the long run, since the Superliners don't have steady access to the upper level and the throughways, and no matter how nice the seats are, I'm also concerned about the mechanical reliability of 50-plus-year-old cars. But then again, the Superliners along with the just as old Amfleets seem to work just fine, and prove that the Santa Fe and Pennsylvania railroads are dominant in design. Regardless, it's still great to see these long-lasting railcars refurbished, providing a comfy ride for those traveling across the nation. Thank you everyone for watching this month's episode of the Pensyfan Periodical. There have been a lot of rail news headlines for the month, and it will be very interesting to see what the future has in store for all these articles. Thank you again for watching, and if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more. Have a good day.